News. The embattled Starehe Member of Parliament Charles Jaguar, popularly known as Jaguar, is expected in court this morning following his arrest yesterday. The MP is alleged to have made utterances that border on xenophobia, and that issue forms our topic of discussion today. In studio with me on my left, we have Professor Macharia Munene, who is an international relations expert and a professor of history at the United States International University. Also, to my left, Dr. Kenneth Kambona, who is an international development expert. We also have with us George Mushe, to my far right, who is an immigration expert, and policy researcher Edward Wanyonyi. Gentlemen, many thanks for joining us in studio this morning for this conversation. Professor Macharia, I'd like to begin with you on the full impact of these utterances really in the wake of all the plans that have been put down to enhance East African integration.
It's a very unfortunate development. For one, Jaguar is not a law officer, and he has no business encouraging breach of the law for whatever reason. It affects the neighborhood because those other countries will start asking what do they do in that regard. But his remarks also point to some serious tensions within the region.
Right.
Kenya, the president opened the country to people in East Africa to come, stay, trade, marry, and there was no reciprocal demand on the other side. So maybe those others have taken advantage of that offer, but their countries have not bothered to reciprocate because there is unease. Kenyans complain that they do not get as good a treatment when they go to those other countries. So there is that. But the remark by Jaguar is very unfortunate. It's uncalled for. He is a member of parliament. He could have raised the matter in parliament and questioned the law enforcement officers and the immigration officers for allowing people to do illegal things.
All right.
Those who are here trading legally is another matter. Those who are here illegally, they should be dealt with that way.
Another matter altogether.
Yes.
And Dr. Kambona, I want us to discuss, something Professor Macharia raises, and that is the tensions within the region. Because during a point of order within the National Assembly yesterday, we saw National Assembly Majority Leader Aden Duale support, the Starehe legislator in a way, saying Tanzanians have been given all this freedom to come to our country and dump their goods in the market, but Kenyans do not have the same freedom. So does this raise deeper issues between Kenya-Tanzania diplomatic relations, really?
For sure it does, and let me just take it from this point. For many years I worked at the United States Agency for International Development as the head of the East African Community Desk, and one of our main focuses was how we can, of course that's the whole essence of the EAC, that is to integrate the region, but the integration happens in 5 stages, or should happen in 5 stages. And the pillar 1 was the customs union. Pillar 2 is the common market. Pillar 3 was to be the monetary union, and pillar 4 was to be the political federation. Now we've moved to pillar 2 now, where we are on to a common market. And like Prof said, a common market, one of the things that it was really anchored on is movement of goods and services, and of course trade, which is the main reason why we are together as EAC. And so back to your question, how do we attain this trade? This trade is only attained when we allow the people from across borders to move with their goods. Now, when it comes to Jaguar's statement in regards to this, it negates the entire effort that is being made both by the presidents of the region, but even by the citizens to trade together. I'll give you a very good example. I come from more or less a border county,
right.
Even my name is Tanzanian, by the way. I'm Kenyan, original Kenyan, to be sure.
Right.
But now when somebody comes, a leader, not just anybody, but a leader comes and says, oh, traders should be chased. And yet I know in my common market, we have as many Tanzanians traders there as they can be. So I think the point we should now be focusing is, first, our leadership. Are they really informed on issues? Secondly, our government, do they really listen to our members of parliament? Because such should not be allowed. Because when I hear them, and I know I may be getting a little faster, but when I hear them comparing what Jaguar said with what Matiang'i said,
Right.
This is an issue of law, and we've heard it from Prof here, that if somebody is here legally and is trading legally, there's no problem. But I think the minister was talking about illegal immigrants, and that is very clear for any country, whether you're in America or Kenya or Tanzania. So, number one, a leader like Jaguar must be very careful and be sure about what he's saying before he utters such a serious thing that will affect what has been painfully put together under the East African community.
All right, because he does have supporters who say what he said may have had great intentions, but the packaging could have been wrong. Let me bring in George. As an immigration expert, we've already seen a video going viral on Twitter, although it cannot be authenticated now. A Tanzanian legislator saying, let's not be easy on these Kenyans. If that's what the Kenyan legislator said, then we can as well round up Kenyans, give them a good beating and deport them back to the airport as well. Talk to us about the full impact of these utterances on, the whole immigration spectrum.
Thank you. I think the politicians and Kenyans have spoken a lot about this, and scholars like Prof and Dr. Kambona. But I think for me, the statement by Jaguar has two aspects. As to the subject of his statement, I think it's fine to start discussing, are we allowing in too much? The style and the manner and how he said is absolutely ridiculous, should not be allowed, because it's incitement to violence. If you look at it, even if you remove the Tanzanian bit and is put another person, would still be wrong. But then again, we really need to have a discussion about this. We cannot pretend. The president opened the borders, yes, he did, but the people below him, the bureaucrat, did not actualize in terms of, because opening the border does not mean really people walking in, walking out. There has to be a way of knowing who is in here. You will make it easier for them and know who is here. But if you go to Gikomba, I think it's free for everyone, okay? They have been there for so long. But then again, as an immigration practitioner, what am I looking at? You're looking at the legality of people being around. There is no country you can just walk in and walk out, even if there is that agreement. For a long time, and I keep saying this, it's unfortunate that members of parliament keep discussing about immigration only when they are criticizing the department. The Department of Immigration is a very small entity, of less than 2,000 people in a country of 50 million people. And 70 to 80% of those officers sit in offices, in Nyaya House, at the airport. There is no person who is out in the street enforcing the law. So we need to see more of law enforcement. If you enforce the law more, there will be fewer people in the country who are unlawful. And the people that we will have in Gikomba would be properly here, and you will not have the tensions we are seeing. So I think in as much as we want to castigate Jaguar, the subject of his utterances cannot be ignored.
Absolutely. And George brings in an important issue, Edward. As a policy researcher, Professor Macharia also alluded to policy that could have been used from Jaguar as a legislator really to bring these issues up. But let's discuss that immigration issue, because it does signal to a loophole within our country.
I think the challenge that we have, especially that sentiment, from my perspective, is the fact that we have given very low thresholds to our politicians, and they actually play on that aspect, and now tend to, when they feel cornered and they feel pressurized that they're not doing so much that they're supposed to do, they whip up the public masses, and they take something as sensitive as that and make it to be a political capital, because they know it will be something they will cheer, the public will cheer, but they don't really understand the ramifications of that. So to the extent of Jaguar's low threshold of understanding international politics and dynamics, we might try to excuse the voters who actually gave him the mandate. But at the same time, we have to ensure that he's well castigated and reminded of issues which are of greater stake. One of it is that as Africa, we are moving towards a free continental trade-free area. We are really moving towards a way with this whole issue of IDs, because we are saying that we have to have free trade and free movement of people. So really for him to try to bring such sentiments, it's actually playing to the hands of people who have already stereotyped Kenyans across the borders and say that Kenyans are pushy, Kenyans are this kind of people. So it really plays to that stereotype. And what does it make? It makes people to really justify why they've been protecting their markets and their businesses from Kenyans going in. So that's one of the things which Jaguar needs to really be reminded. But you can understand where he's making the sentiments and the kind of constituency that actually voted him.
All right. And so what is coming clear from this is that there is a conversation underneath these remarks that needs to be discussed in the country. We are showing live pictures from the court there. Charles Jaguar said to be arraigned in court, and Professor Macharia is being arraigned. It is said that he uttered xenophobic utterances. Let's talk about that. As a professor of history, really, is this the beginning of what xenophobia looks like?
Or it has the potential of getting out of hand. But the expectations is that it will be contained. And I think the reaction has been good from the public, the officials. Just let Jaguar anybody like that. There is a limit. The issue of re-looking at policy, national policy, I think that's the more important thing. Jaguar as a person is just a problem and can be dealt with as somebody, a potential lawbreaker. And because that's what he is. But the main problem of national policy on reciprocity, whether the Tanzanians, they do not seem to have agreed on that. How do Kenyans treat Tanzanians? How do Tanzanians treat Kenyans? How do Rwandese treat Uganda? There is need for that strong conversation within the region. How do you treat your people? Forget about people outside the region, but people within the region. And right now there is a dissonance as the way they are treating. On the immigration issue, there's even a bigger problem. Not the workers, because those are just technicians, but the policymakers. We have today people who come to the airport without visas, and they just say, I'm a tourist. And they fill a new form, they pay $50, and they get in. Okay? Now, Kenyans trying to go to those places, you try to go to England, or try to go to America, you go through a lot of hassles. So, and sometimes some of the people who come and say they are tourists at the airport are thugs. As long as they have a British, American, or European passport, they get in. Now, these are serious national issues that need to be looked at as a matter of policy, reciprocity. If a Kenyan cannot go to the US or Britain or Europe, why should they come here just by showing up at the airport with a passport and saying like this? So, I mean, these are anomalies that make the country look very weak and look as if it is unable to protect its interests. You know. So the ability to demand reciprocity and fair treatment of citizens is a key thing that we need to discuss as a country. As to the arguments sometimes made, you know, oh, we need these tourists to come and donate a few shillings or whatever. Does not make a lot of sense, because it lowers your dignity.
So at the end of the day, these are diplomatic decisions where two parties lay down on the table what they want and take what they feel is enough for them. So who then, Dr. Kambona, is failing Kenyans on this issue of reciprocity? Is the Kenyan delegation asking for too little?
Yes, and I want to take this in two perspectives. There's the political angle, which we have all alluded to this morning, and the reason being that this whole thing was ignited by a politician. But then there is the other issue of competitiveness that is making a foreigner think that doing business here, he'll be profiting more than even, so that the Kenyans feel they are being they're not competitive enough. Now so let me discuss that. On the political angle, every sovereign state must protect its borders, and we have an immigration expert here, and that must be done diplomatically, legally, according to international statutes, which are very well laid out. So nobody should just walk in and out and do business in a country without any legal or international statute that is followed. Right. And even countries like the European Union, where most of the countries are working together, you can actually drive from maybe Spain to another maybe Germany without any much hindrance. There are rules and regulations which protect that, and you can do business in all those places. There's nothing, and we are, by the way, the EAC is modeled on the EU principle of where you can do trade. Now that is politics, and still we can say we must protect ourselves, but we must protect ourselves within the globalization agenda. Right. So that's number one. Number two, why are businessmen and women from Tanzania, Uganda, China finding it cheap to do business here? The reason is that we are not competitive as a country. We have are we supporting our small and medium enterprises to the level that they can be able to compete with somebody from China or goods from Tanzania? No. So we have both an internal environment to look at and an external environment. Now, my focus will today be on more of the internal environment. Right. Why should a trader in Kikomba, a Kenyan, not be able to compete fairly with a trader from Uganda who is from Owino market? The Kikomba here in Uganda, it's an Owino market. So the issue is, we've made as a country a politician like Jaguar, whose main constituents is Kikomba. I mean, the Kikomba traders should have gone to Parliament day one and said, hey, we are not competitive because of 1, 2, 3 power, energy, or maybe the way we're processing and whatever else is making us not competitive. So people, the Kikomba traders, need this. And he should hype it in Parliament every day, even if that is what he does. Not either Tanga or Kieleweke. That will bring this to the fore. But doing the kind of agenda that we are now seeing in Nandi, where there is Governor Sang going with a power saw and getting things out, an investment out, then coming to Nairobi and Jaguar running around with stones, that does not hold any water. I mean, it will not work. So let us be competitive. Let Kenyan goods not be, or trading not be as expensive. Is our rent system for small traders fair enough? Why can't they expand their trade to the level that, I'll give you a good example, Ivory Coast. I've been interacting, and we know I know how they trade there. If you are foreigner trading there, you will close shop the next day. Right. Why? Because they are being supported by their government in terms of the things they need to make them competitive. All right. Yeah.
Let's bring in George as an immigration expert here. We have live pictures of Charles Jaguar already at the Milimani Law Court. Here's what he tweeted after this saga. He says his sentiments echoed a directive by CS Matiang'i that was meant for the Chinese who invaded our markets, making businesses almost unbearable for our citizens. I am not against any regional unions that are meant to promote both local and regional trade. But Dr. Kambona raises a very important issue. Have we made the environment conducive for the Kenyan trader to be able to sufficiently compete? I was listening to them on TV yesterday, and they say, I mean, these guys have come to our country and now they're selling things, they're pushing us out of our own market. How is that possible if the government is providing a conducive environment?
I think, and they spoke very well. I think the immigration here is a scapegoat. I'm sorry, it's a scapegoat. Tanzanians are scapegoats, Chinese are scapegoat. Why are they finding it easier to do business here and become profitable, whereas a Kenyan, a Kikuyu or a George from Tharaka is not able to do the same? But I want to get back into immigration. That's where I know things. In the world today, if you look at the World Migration Report by IOM, 3 to 4% people are moving from one country to the other. And these people are moving for business, for work, and so forth. So whether you like it or not, people will keep moving around the world. There are so many Kenyans in other countries, you will be shocked, right? So we have to be very careful. But that does not mean we do not need to enforce our immigration laws. And that brings me back to the issue of non-enforcement. We are not doing anything. It is a laissez-faire situation we have here. Anyone walks in, like Professor is saying. In fact, the people, Professor, that you talk about come in as tourists, but they're coming to work. They will be at the university making presentation with you, but they do not have the requisite visa. Mm-hmm. It goes down to, if you go to the US, to all the countries, we have an immigration police, not those intellectuals sitting in offices speaking a lot of English. People in the street asking, how are you here? So we need to enforce our immigration. We need to expand our immigration officials in terms and empower them to be able to enforce. But again, you realize, and Professor can confirm, within the realm of public international law, citizenship and immigration is left to individual countries to decide. Therefore, if Tanzania is strict and strong on enforcement of the immigration, it's up to us to decide how we want to do. And I think the president has taken the position that Kenya is open for business. But that does not mean we do not need to rethink about it and ask ourselves, are we giving too much? What are we getting in return for it? Because then you're seeing the ordinary Wanjiku and Gikomba now complaining that this Chinese, this Tanzanian is taking me back to the village and I'm not able to feed my family.
Right. There's some complaint. I mean, they won't even let us sell outside their shops, you know. So those are some of the complaints coming in. But Edward, let's just, take a comparative look at just the East African countries. Forget, the US, forget Canada. What is Tanzania doing different, for example, for its traders that Kenya is not, that we can borrow it?
I think even before we go to the trade, it's just the state structure of Tanzania, and look at how the state structure is in terms of, by virtue of their political structure, they are able to look internally and deal with issues which are dealing with people coming into the country more firmly than what we're having in Kenya. In Kenya, we are top heavy. Our biggest obsession is about succession politics. So really, what kind of resources are we going to develop into issues like immigration or trade policy, really? All the people in parliament, they're dealing with all issues in terms of who is going to get into power. So really, we don't have devolved. That's why you're saying we're top heavy. The office of the president still controls a big chunk of the budget. So really, what money is going to be put in terms of issues to do with border immigration issues, surveillance issues, issues to do with work policy, issues to do with labor, it is a challenge. Even the new constitution as it is gave still the president a lot of informal power. You see, he still has a say in terms of the taxation policy. He still has a say in terms of issues to do with real where the resources of the country are going. So in essence, or in effect, we have just left the other matters uncontrolled. And that's why you have all these kind of issues in terms of the trader is left to fend on his own. You are literally left to fend on your own. And I've kept on asking myself this question: what really do you benefit from being a Kenyan? Right. I mean, you pay for the passport, you pay for NHIF, you pay for all these services. So what really is there as a benefit for you to, what is the dividend of a citizen in this country? And we have not answered that question, because it is, and when you hear and see athletes going to change citizenship, when you hear Kenyans saying, I need to get a job where I can go even to Saudi Arabia, where I know for sure I can be frustrated, what is the citizenship dividend? We have never answered that question. Right. And until the day we'll answer that question, we'll still have all these kind of problems. And we'll go back and start blaming Tanzania, which is a ruse, as he said. Right. We'll blame the Chinese, which is a ruse.
And it's a very important question that he asked. What is the dividend of a citizen? I want us to take a short break. We'll be coming back with this conversation. Remember, we're asking you on Twitter, do you support the utterances by Sarehe legislator Charles Jaguar of foreign traders in the country? Jaguar is this morning expected to be arraigned in court. He is already at the Milimani Law Courts. We've been showing you live pictures of that. We're coming back with this conversation right here on News Center.